Welcome. I'm Marcia Day Childress from the Center for Biomedical Ethics and Humanities and Director of the Medical Center Hour. As sometimes happens, this program, this Medical Center Hour, is jointly presented with the Department of Medicine's Grand Rounds. Hence the split the difference on the start time today of 12:15. And I'd like to give a special welcome not only to our usual Medical Center Hour audience, but also to the faculty, students, and residents of the Department of Medicine. The occasion for this partnership is the visit to UVA of Dr. Paul Haidet, a general internist on the faculty of Penn State University's College of Medicine in Hershey, Pennsylvania, where he is a professor of medicine, humanities, and public health sciences. He also co-directs the Office for Scholarship in Learning and Information and Education Research. Dr. Haidet is a leading medical educator, this at a time when medical education across the continuum of the physician's preparation is in flux and under scrutiny. It's not just a matter of what future doctors need to know and why, but how best might they learn and where and when. How best might we teach and model the manifold aspects of medicine and physicianship? And how do we actually know we're doing this successfully? The opportunity for us to bring Dr. Haidet here and pepper him with these, to him, very familiar questions is the School of Medicine's annual Medical Education Week, a time when the whole academic medicine enterprise here focuses on education of the next generation of physicians, and frankly, engages in some pot stirring about effective ways to do that. We thank the Brody Medical Education Committee, which has invited Dr. Haidet as the recipient of UVA's 2015 Brody Medical Education Award. The Academy of Distinguished Educators is another sponsor of this program, as is the Department of Medicine. There's also a medical education poster session ongoing all week in the corridor outside the Health Sciences Library. And there'll be a reception there in the library at 5 o'clock this afternoon with Dr. Haidet. The poster makers and the medical education leadership team will also be there. So please do stop by, have a look, and have a chat with some of the people who have posters on display. Now I think we're in for a remarkable presentation titled Jazz and the Art of Teaching. Suffice it for me to echo Dr. Haidet's proposition, teaching has important parallels to improvisational jazz performance. Let's see where he and all of us go with this comparative possibility. Welcome, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marcia. It's a huge honor to be here. And Evan Hield, who is hosting me, we were having a conversation in the car about Anne Brody and her relationship with Dr. Corbett. And it's so interesting to hear the idea of pot stirring, because it sounds like the doctor-patient relationship between Dr. Corbett and Ms. Brody was distinctly different during her last days of life. You could say, in effect, Dr. Corbett was stirring the pot, so to speak. And what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk some about teaching. And I'm going to encourage you, I realize that this is Medicine Grand Rounds, and you might be inclined to think, okay, this is about teaching, it's going to talk about all this classroom stuff, what does that have to do with me? I would encourage us to broaden our gaze at teaching. We all teach, with students, with our patients. There are multiple teacher roles that we encounter during the day. So I would encourage you to think about, where is your teaching venue, and how might some of the concepts we're going to deal on play out in your sphere of the world. And so this is called Jazz and the Art of Teaching, Finding Your Teacher's Voice. I have no conflicts of interest. I'm a communication educator guy, and I have not found any company yet that is willing to pay me lots of money so that I have a conflict of interest, but that's not for want of trying. I want to share with you a vision for teaching activities. This comes from Ken Bain's book. Ken Bain did a study of the best college teachers across the country in multiple universities. And this is a quote from that book. While methods vary, the best teachers often try to create what we have come to call a natural critical learning environment. In that environment, people learn by confronting intriguing, beautiful, or important problems, authentic tasks that will challenge them to grapple with ideas, rethink their assumptions, and examine their mental models of reality. These are challenging yet supportive conditions in which learners feel a sense of control over their education. They work collaboratively with others, they believe their work will be considered fairly and honestly, and they try, fail, and receive feedback from expert learners in advance of and separate from any summative judgment of their effort. Okay, so that sounds all nice and good, but how am I supposed to do that? How am I supposed to get there? I look at that and I think, that's great. I want that. I want to have that environment in my classroom. But what am I supposed to do? How do I do that? I would submit that there's a question underneath this question, which is even more fundamentally important. And that question is, who are you? Who are you? Where does your teaching come from? And this frames what we're going to talk about today. The premise I'd like to put in front of the audience is that teaching is an inherently improvisational activity. That even if you're giving a didactic lecture, the moment one learner raises his hand and interrupts you and asks a question, you're going off the map that you started with, and you're going to have to improvise. And so to be a good teacher is to be a good improviser. And there's some things we can learn from other fields where people have to improvise. NFL quarterbacks have to improvise. I'll bet you the NFL quarterback coaches are very good at teaching improvisation. Theater actors have to improvise. How many people have seen the show, What's My Line Anyway? Yeah, that show's all about improvisation. Cooking is about improvisation. How many people watch Chopped? That show's all about improvisation. And jazz musicians improvise. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to explore one improvisational concept within the realm of jazz a little bit, and then we're going to see what, if anything, relates to teaching. And so the concept we're going to deal on is developing one's voice. So here are the objectives for the session. I would draw attention to the last objective, have fun. That's my most primary objective. I can't tell you what voice is. It's the kind of thing that the more you try to define it, the more it's like sand. It squeezes out between your fingers. So I can't define it for you, but I can tell you a story about it. And the story is this. If you're a young jazz musician, you're in a high school, you play in your jazz band, you're pretty good, and you decide that you want to make music your career, and you decide you want to go to one of the major jazz schools. You're going to go to Berklee College of Music in Boston, or North Texas State, or Indiana, or the New School in New York. You're going to go to one of those schools. Now let's assume you get into one of those schools. The first thing you're going to have to do is gain complete and utter mastery of your instrument. If you play saxophone, you're going to have to be able to know every song. There are about 250 jazz standard songs. You have to learn all those songs, be able to play them in any key at the drop of a hat. We're going to play Stella by Starlight in B flat. Boom, away you go. You have to get to the point where you think a musical phrase, and you don't have to think the fingering of that musical phrase. You just do it. Complete and utter mastery of your instrument. And if that's all you do, you will never be a very good jazz musician. Because once you've done that, you have to develop your voice on your instrument. Jazz fans can hear one bar of John Coltrane and one bar of Sonny Rollins and say, that's Train, that's Sonny Rollins, even if they haven't heard that bar of music before. Because their voice is coming through on their instrument. Who they are is in the playing. You have to develop your voice on your instrument. So here's what we're going to do. Who can tell me who one of these two women is? Anybody know who this is?
Billie Holiday.
Billie Holiday on the bottom, yep. Who's the one on top? Not Ella Fitzgerald, although great choice. Not Nina Simone, another great choice. She does look like Nina Simone. I'm sorry? Who shout out again? Sarah Vaughan, it's Sarah Vaughan. So that's Sarah Vaughan and Billie Holiday. What I'm going to play for you is the song They Can't Take That Away From Me. I'm going to play you two versions, one by Sarah Vaughan and one by Billie Holiday. These two versions were recorded within 3 years of one another. They are going to play these two versions in the same key at the same tempo. I once actually counted it out. They're within 1 beat per minute of one another. So I'm holding the structural parameters of the song constant. And I would invite you to listen to how they land differently if they do for you as you listen. So here are some ideas to sort of think about. Listen, defining characteristics of their style. What would you think these singers' major strengths are? And as you're listening, I would invite you to deal on this question. What might you assume about who these two women are in real life from what you're hearing in the way the song sounds? Okay? So, can we lower the front lights a little bit? So, I take a little side note and note that there's two kinds of listeners in this world. There are music listeners and lyric listeners. My wife is a lyric listener, and I'm a music listener. And the acid test for that are songs by the band America. Because America had great music and the most stupid lyrics ever. And every time I listen to an America song, my wife's like, get that off, that's so stupid. And I'm like, yeah, but listen to the music. So, for those of you who are lyric listeners, here's the lyrics to the song so you can follow along as we listen. So this is They Can't Take That Away From Me by first Sarah Vaughan, then Billie Holiday. Holiday. So here's what I would invite you to do. Find a partner and say hello. Preferably somebody you don't know that well. Go, 2 seconds, find your partner. You'll be, no, not yet. Okay. So you've been thinking about the 3 questions that are on the slide. I've got a new question for you to consider with your partner. And here's the part where we go a little bit off the map and get kind of abstracty on this one. My question for you to consider with your partner is to decide as a pair which one singer you would most want to be like as a teacher, and why. So of the 2 singers you've just heard, which one you want to be more like as a teacher, as your teacher self? And when you got it, so your mission, if you choose to accept it, is for you and your partner to reach consensus. And everybody should have a card. We'll be around to give you markers. When you have decided which one you want to be more like, write the name real big on the card, and then we'll see where this goes. Okay? 5 minutes to decide. Go. Which one you want to be more like. So one thing before you start. Hello. Sorry. Before you start, I don't really care which one you choose. What I care about is why you chose the one you chose. So don't just choose and say, we want to be like Sarah, we want to be like Billie. I want to know why. And that's what I'm going to press you on. So have your why ready to go. Okay, go. This will be on the test. Okay. So I'll give you 2 seconds to write the name down real big. Sarah, Billie, Vaughn, or Holiday. Huh? You're going to have to write a name. You're going to have to pick her. That's wishy-washy. You've got to throw your chips down one way or the other. All right, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to count to 3, and we're going to hold our cards up real high so we can see what everybody else chose. Ready? 1, 2, 2.5, 2 3/4, 2 5/8, 3. Hold them up. Vaughn, Billie, Vaughn, Holiday, Vaughn, Sarah, Vaughn, Holiday, Sarah. Okay, it looks like there's more Vaughns than Holidays, but it's not completely unanimous. So who would like to share first why they chose who they chose?
I chose Sarah Vaughn, and I think I convinced my partner a little bit, but I just felt like she was happier, and her range of highs and lows, even with the same line of the song, was higher and lower and vacillated, fluctuated. It held my interest. It made me think she was just having fun with this a little and improvising. I just enjoyed listening. I almost felt like Billie Holiday was reflecting on sad days or something. It made me think sadness a little bit, or a little nostalgia, maybe.
Other folks, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I'm John Harrison, the Bioethics Center and Philosophy Department. I would go with Billie for the opposite reasons. I guess, so Billie struck me as somebody who, and maybe I'm just reading in whatever I know about Billie Holiday, but she seems more real and less sort of artificially peppy, right? So as a professor, I think I prefer a more grounded, ironic style or even nostalgic style to a kind of perennially upbeat style. I could get very tired of that very quickly.
In terms of your teachers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or in terms of how I want to be.
Go ahead. Start shouting it out.
I also chose Billie Holiday. My partner and I both preferred Billie Holiday's performance. So during the thing, I was like, I think they're going to ask us about teaching, and I was wondering how I could justify my personal jazz prejudices to say Billie Holiday was a better teacher. And so I preferred it for the singers to kind of sing the song pretty straight and let the beauty of the music come through. And maybe during the instrumental part, then they do some fancy stuff. But I love hearing the actual song, and Billie Holiday does that really well. And from a teacher, then if you're trying to learn this song, it would be easier to learn it from Billie Holiday, I think, because she sings the notes, especially in the first time through. She sings them straight on, so you can hear, oh, that's how the song is kind of playing. And then you can add your own stuff to that on top of it, which I think helps from a learner's perspective to see, let's see the basic way and then see how to do it. And I can maybe do my fancy way later on.
What's this song about? Shout it out.
Remembering somebody that you're not with anymore.
Remembering somebody that you're not with anymore. Loss.
Optimism.
Optimism. Tell us what you're thinking. Who said optimism? Tell us what you're thinking. Why is this song about
away. I still have you. It took you away from me, but I still have you.
I still have you in here or wherever. Okay.
Optimism in the face of loss.
Optimism in the face of loss. Let me ask this. Is the meaning any different when Sarah sings it versus when Billie sings it? I'm seeing head nods yes.
Yeah, here.
Why? Go ahead.
Well, I know the song already, and I thought that Sarah brought a wonderful irony and joy to the song. Like, the memories were so happy that it was okay, that she was that this thing had ended, whereas Billie, I do agree with what people have said, really more serious, and I thought a sadder, flatter feeling to it.
It's interesting. I do this with medical students at Penn State, and I had a class of medical students one year who can, the problem with this song is it's maddeningly vague. There's a lot of detail that's left out of the lyrics. And the students I had one year conceptualized the song this way. As sung by Sarah Vaughan, they thought the song was about a breakup, and they said, Sarah is on the way up after the breakup, and Billie is on the way down. So Billie's still on her way down, and Sarah's turned the corner and is back on the way up. Isn't it interesting that I held the structural parameters, or they held the structural parameters of the song constant? Same key, same tempo, same words, and yet the song has different meaning based on the different voices that we heard the song in. Okay. Who here has no idea before now who Sarah Vaughan or Billie Holiday was? Everybody else knows exactly who Sarah Vaughan and Billie Holiday is. Okay. For those who are not jazz fans and don't know jazz history, I want you to speculate wildly for a minute and just shout it out. Who are these people in real life? Tell me what you know about them by hearing the 3 minutes of music. Shout it out. Sarah Vaughan first. Who is she? What's she like in real life? Shout it out.
Extrovert.
Extrovert. What else?
Perform.
Loves to perform.
Sassy.
Sassy. What else?
Playful.
Playful.
Successful.
Successful. Okay, there were chuckles when somebody said sassy, because that indeed was Sarah Vaughan's nickname. Sassy. Actually, her first nickname was Sailor, because she could cuss as well as any of the guys. The record company thought that wouldn't sell records, so they changed it to Sassy. Billie Holiday, who's she as a person?
Heroin user.
Heroin user. Okay, we've got a jazz historian here. Somebody who doesn't know Billie Holiday, tell me what you would speculate about who she is. Tragic?
Been through a lot.
I'm sorry?
Been through a lot.
Been through a lot.
Wounded.
Did somebody say wounded? Wounded. Yep. What else?
Used up.
Used up.
Also,
Old soul. Billie Holiday's nickname was given to her by the saxophonist Lester Young. It's a little bit more cryptic. Her nickname was Lady Day. Billie Holiday was indeed a heroin user. She died in her, how old was she when she died, do you know? She was like in her 40s, I think. She led a tragic life. She grew up on the streets of Baltimore, I think. Really sort of a tragic story. Sarabande lived a very long life. Yeah, in essence, you heard 3 minutes of each person's voice. He pretty much pegged who these two singers are. Okay, let's watch a video. Okay, so it's time to sort of start thinking about what, if any of this, translates into teaching. So, I trolled the internet and I found this YouTube video of a college teacher. This is just kind of random. So, the reason I chose this one is because this guy, I think, shows some parallels to medical teachers that I've seen. He's using kind of a weird kind of technique, but that's okay. So here's what I want you to do. Or here's the question that's going to come. Watch this guy. The question I'm going to have for you is describe this guy's voice in 3 words or less. That's what you're going to try to do with your group. Okay? So let's take a look at our teacher here. He's a college teacher. It's a college classroom, and he's teaching. It looks like a philosophy course to me. Oh, why did you do that? Come back. Come back. Let's start first. Here we go.
Very good. Give your neighbor another 10-finger woo. Woo. Okay. Okay, stop. Let me see your faces. Now, last day of the course, I am going to reveal to you, yes, reveal to you, the secret of how the entire course has been organized. Rubbing your hands together. Tell your neighbor, oh, sweet mama, I can't wait for this. Ready, go. Tell your neighbor. Oh, sweet mama, I can't wait for this. All right, listen very carefully. Now, Nick, what we have here is really a double journey. The organizational pattern of the entire course is about the path of rationalism and the path of empiricism and how they meet at a magical point. Did you understand what I said? Say it back to me, young man.
The whole course, we can see, is divided between 2 lines, the rationalistic line and the empiricistic line, or empiricism line. And they all meet at one point, a magical point.
Okay, give him a 10-finger woo. Woo. Turn to your neighbor, waggling your finger in your neighbor's face, say what Nick said. Ready, go, talk. Okay, stop. Let me see your face. Now, Tricia, here is the rationalistic line. Zeno holds that motion is an illusion, so our senses deceive us. We only get knowledge independently of our senses. Plato holds that our senses deceive us and only show us shadows, and we have knowledge in the forms inside our minds. Anselm holds that we don't learn about God through our senses. We learn about God by analyzing the idea of God. And Descartes holds, hey, you can't trust your senses. In fact, you can't even tell if you're dreaming or not. The only thing you can know for certain is that you exist, and from that existence you can prove God's existence. Did you understand all that, Tricia?
Okay.
Give it a try, go.
The rationalists, we have Zeno, who...
Tell her it's cool. Turn to your neighbor. Try to do it. Ready, set, go. Talk to your neighbor.
Plato believed in the forms, and we should elaborate on that.
Okay, stop. Shh. Tabitha, everyone focus. Now, Tabitha, let's talk about the rationalism line. We start with Zeno, who holds that motion is an illusion. If you hold motion is an illusion, that means you don't trust your senses. Then we go on to Plato, who holds that the lower realm of the senses is the realm of the cave, the realm of shadows. Only the mind, independently of the senses, can know truth. Anselm says, listen, you can know that God exists by examining the idea of God, by turning inward. And Descartes says, Your senses can't even tell you if you're asleep or dreaming. You can prove that you exist, and from that proof, by examining the idea of God, you can prove that God exists. Did you understand that? Prove it to me. Ready, set, go.
Okay, on the rationalist line, first there's Zeno. And Zeno believed that motion was an illusion, and by saying that, he said that we can't really trust our senses, so therefore he's not an empiricist. And Plato believed in the realm of forms, which was, the perfect realm, and everything below it was just an imperfect copy of that. And so by saying that, he's saying that we, independently of our senses, have knowledge of the realm of forms. And Anselm believes that we can know the idea of God, or we can know God by examining the idea of God. So he's saying that we don't know God from our senses. And then Descartes says that we can't be sure of our senses because they deceive us of things even up close. And so, he's not an empiricist either.
Okay. That's better than a 10-finger woo. That's a 10-finger rolling woo. Ready, go. Woo. Turn your neighbor. Say what Tevin said. Ready, set, go. What you say?
Okay. The question I would invite you to consider in your group is describe this teacher's voice with 3 words or less. When you have the 3 words, write them real big on your card, and we'll see what we get. Okay? 5 minutes. Go ahead. You? All right, let's see what we got. Okay, here we go. Count of 3. Hold up your cards. 1, 2, 3. Hold them up. Keep them up. Enthusiastic, controlling, loud, commanding, precious, pyramid scheme. Interactive, responsive, supportive, memorization and shenanigans, direct, coach, loud, engaging, chaotic, dominating, preacher, performer, respect, enthusiasm, clarity. Wow, it sounds like we're on both sides of the fence here about this guy. Somebody want to tell us why you chose the words you chose? Thank you. Thank you, Reverend.
John Arrows again. I didn't write this down, but my 3 words would be way too cute. I'm actually a philosophy professor myself, and this struck me. I would want to shoot this guy after a couple of hours because the teaching technique was really kind of rote learning. He wasn't really engaging the students with the concepts. He was just asking them to parrot back content that he had given them. I'd give him an F as a teacher.
Applause for that. Somebody else, tell us what you're thinking. Go ahead, shout it out.
We thought it was kind of forced engagement for the students. If they were going to be in that room, they had to parrot back, do the thing, and a lot of bravado on his part, but kind of rigid because he had his specific things he wanted them to parrot back to him.
So if you were a student in that class, you would have felt like there wasn't much latitude to move.
Right.
Okay? Go ahead.
We both felt he was engaging because he was trying to activate all their senses. He was involving, hearing, touching, and then getting rewards for when, someone was getting it right. So we thought he was very engaging.
5-finger rolling woos and all that. Yeah. What else? Go ahead. Shout it out.
I like how he, when the one woman didn't know what the answer was or didn't know what to say, forgot, whatever, he turned it back to the group. He said, and everybody said, that's cool, and then they taught each other. And it wasn't just the usual where we say, help her out, as though there was something wrong with her. It was, no, this is where you guys engage. Get it right with each other. And I like that.
Well, I didn't like him at all, but and I think he was totally teacher-centered, but he was engaging, he was challenging, and he was reinforcing, and he was at the bottom of Bloom's level.
So there's conceptual issues on where he's teaching at. Go ahead, in the middle, in the black coat, show it out.
So there's a phrase used in jazz a lot, that music is acknowledging the space between the notes, and I think he was doing that. I think that he wasn't just droning on, as a lot of teachers would do. He could still foment discussion, but he kind of made a rhythm to the class, and he allowed for those spaces to exist with the students too, the finger rolls to each other. So maybe the entire content wasn't exactly being expressed, maybe they weren't really thinking for themselves the whole time, but they were really engaged in a rhythm. I'm sure that class felt very engaged for all of them.
Yeah, you had that whole call and response thing going. And you got to ask yourself, for those of you who put preacher, do people learn things in church? I'm just asking. Go ahead.
I would just like to point out that none of those students were texting in class.
Yeah, so I don't know where that came from. Yeah. Speculate with this teacher, with his voice, what would he have done if students were what would you have thought he would have done if students were texting in their classroom?
One texting.
Finger wag. Yeah. Okay, let's do the Sarah and Billie thing. Call out some, I don't have the answer for you on this one, so we're just speculating wildly. Who is this guy in real life? Controlling, okay.
Caring.
Caring? Did I hear caring?
Passionate.
Passionate.
Committed.
Committed, pompous. A wrestling coach. Entertainer. Committed, fun. Confident.
High blood pressure.
High blood pressure.
We thought he was encouraging because there were no wrong answers. And he rewarded people if they sort of talked outside of just repeating word for word.
What did you think about that moment where he picked the student who couldn't say it? Was that a good moment or a bad moment?
Good.
For you. Good, why was it good?
Because you didn't pin her down, and I think if you want to have your students talk to you in class, they have to feel safe and know that if you want your students to talk in your class, they have to be confident that if they offer a wrong answer, they won't be slammed.
Yeah, it's, I find that moment a really interesting yin-yang kind of moment, because he called her out. So that feels unsafe. And yet when she couldn't get it, he did the whole "that's cool" thing, which felt safe. So there was over time, students might learn, okay, I might be put on the hot seat, but it'll be okay. He's not going to, publicly humiliate me or something. Go ahead.
I thought if we had a functional MR of the brains of the students, a lot of the brain would be lit up. So there was a lot going on.
What makes you say that? Tell me what you would think.
Because it was so kinetic. They weren't just saying what they heard, and he wasn't just telling them things. He made them use their hands. He made them interact. It was very physical kind of learning, and I've never been in a medical school class like that.
Boy, the thought that, so I'm having a thought that I've never had before in this thing was that as you're saying what the students looked like, it's interesting that the students looked like he looked like, because he used his hands and he was very kinetic as he moved around the classroom. Other thoughts? So here are some ideas for stuff to think about on the way home today. And for those who are interested, we can make the slides available to you later. What I would invite you to do is describe your current voice as a teacher, or as a doctor, or as a father, or as a spouse. You pick whatever identity is important to you. Describe your current voice. What are its distinguishing characteristics right now? What are your strengths, your birthright gifts? What distinguishing characteristics do you want to develop as you move forward in your career? How can you play to your strengths in your teaching and what strengths do you want to build? In other words, if I went to your learners, if I went to the students who work with you on the boards, or went to the students who sit in your classrooms and I asked them to describe your voice in 3 words or less, what 3 words would you want them to pick for you? And if you're willing to go there, then maybe you'll go here. How will you know? How will you know what your students perceive you as like? And what kinds of data do you need to collect? And questions do you need to ask in order to understand whether your voice is landing the way you would like it to land? And, well, if you're willing to go there, then what kinds of student voices will you have the most difficulty maintaining your own voice with, and why? Because teaching, as in any form of communication, is a process of mutual influence. What our students say influences who we are, and who we are influences who our students are. So these were the goals. Articulate key elements that lead to an impression of style. Understand how others articulate elements and keep or modify your own impressions as a result. And articulate your own strengths, internal preferences, and worldview that shapes your voice. This one is the important one, because who we are, how it comes out behaviorally, what we do is a function of what's inside, what we believe and who we are, if we're going to have an authentic voice with students. In other words, who are you? Who are you? I'll leave you, here are some references about voice kind of stuff, the general references on jazz and the art of medicine. This paper by Catherine Caldecott, I love. She's really into opera. And in opera, there's a thing called entrance music. Characters have like their own themes. So I'll try to hum for you now the most famous entrance music of all time. Dun 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 dun. Yeah, do you want that to be playing when you walk into the classroom? And Mary Catherine Beach wrote a wonderful piece about physician self-disclosure, which ultimately is about how we develop our voice. So for anybody that's interested, we'll have a sheet in the front. If you would like these 3 articles, come and give me your email address legibly, and I will email you these 3 articles as well as the slide deck. And I'll leave you with a quote by Ralph Ellison, who wrote The Invisible Man, who was also a big-time jazz fan. After the jazz man has learned the fundamentals of his instrument and the traditional techniques of jazz, he must then find himself, must be reborn, must find, as it were, his soul. He must achieve, in short, his self-determined identity. Thank you. Who are you?
I'd like to say that we have a few minutes for some closing questions. If you would like to quiz Paul about what was he doing with us today, or further questions about some of the ideas that he presented, or things, we have a couple of minutes to do that, and we'll come around with mics.
You know what I want to ask him? Tell us about his own perceptions of his own voice.
Here's my 3 words, and you can tell me afterward whether I've achieved them or not. My 3 words would be, that I would want you to describe my voice as, would be, makes me think. So you can tell me whether we hit the mark or not today.
I would say yes. How many would say yes? How many would say no?
You can give me a 10-finger rolling move? You know, that's big in my family. We watched this video multiple times. Yeah, we've grown to love this guy. We do 10-finger rolling moves all the time. Yeah.
Any other comments or questions?
I have one. I may be the only one in here. I don't know. I have lived a long life. I have 3 brothers, I have 3 sisters, and I have 3 children. And no matter what my voice is and my worldview is, there's always one in that group that's going to just come pound down on my head about that is not the way it is. I see it this way. So I'm finding that I constantly have to sort of search for my voice and my worldview. I'd like to hear if I'm the only one.
Oh, I'm right there with you. I think that our search for our voice is a never-ending thing, and I think our voices are constantly evolving things. And they're not a fixed point either. I think there's play in our voices because there has to be. Because if we're in relationship with somebody, we're sort of melding our voices so that they can exist harmoniously together, as it were. Jazz musicians. I have a friend, Steve Rudolph, who's one of the most famous jazz musicians the jazz people had never heard of before because he's lived all his life in Central PA, but all the other jazz musicians know Steve Rudolph. I was talking with Steve so he gets to play with all the guys that come through Central PA, and I said, Steve, what do you do when you're first with somebody you don't know? He plays piano, and so as the piano player, he gets to have the melody line, but he also gets to have the harmonic bass because he's using his left hand. And he says, what I do is in the beginning, the two of us are kind of feeling each other out. And I'm throwing little harmonic curveballs because I'm trying to figure out what can this guy do, what can we do together. And he's not doing that to one-up the guy. He's doing that to figure out where they will go next. Once he has an idea of what the guy can do musically, then they're off and running. He tailors his style to that guy, and then they can make really good music together, and the audience will like it. Go ahead.
Thinking about this quote in terms of teaching, so learning the fundamentals and traditional techniques. If you're talking to teachers at different stages in their career, particularly if you're mentoring junior faculty, how do you want to guide them? Do you want to get them, it seems to me you want to get them to be focusing more on the traditionals and that finding your voice is something you do as you get older? Are you doing both all at the same time, or how do you see that over a career?
I think we were talking about this morning. As a teacher, I feel like as teachers we're almost more like a guild than a profession. Teaching is a craft, and I find myself constantly working on my craft. So I'm always looking for new technique, but I'm in parallel thinking about the development of my voice. And while people talk about it really cleanly like this, learn the technique first, then work on your voice, I think it's a simultaneous evolutionary process. So yes, I think we want our young teachers, we want to teach them about, pick your favorite buzzword for today, the flipped classroom, team-based learning, problem-based learning. We want people to learn more and more techniques for working a classroom, but we also want them working on your voice. You've seen me, I have an Italian background, what can I say? I use my hand. But one of my favorite teachers ever was a physiology teacher at Baylor, Chuck Seidel, who his style was the polar opposite of mine. He would stand in front of the class, very, very sort of minimalist, quiet voice, and the questions he would ask would burn the hair off your head. He had this knack for meeting students where they were at with a question that took them one step deeper. And by the end of the classroom, the way students were talking about the subject was so far beyond the way they were talking in the beginning was breathtaking. And so he had learned how to use his voice to draw the students in, to use that quiet voice to put them in sort of a contemplative kind of stance that really got the class going. So it really is, how do you play to your strengths, and how do you use that in the service of achieving your learning objectives? You guys on the wards, you're working with students, right? You are students. Are other residents gone? Yeah, it's medicine grand rounds. When you guys get on the wards, you'll be working with students. So as students, the question is, at the end of the month, where do you want to be at? And maybe you might want to ask your senior resident, where do you think I am now? Or where do you think I should be by the end of this month? And how am I going to get there? Because if they're really concerned about your learning, well, that's where you got to know where you're going before you can go there. You don't just get in your car and drive and say, I'm driving to, Staunton. Staunton? Isn't it Stanton? I'm driving to Stanton. Driving to Scranton. You got to know where you're going before you start driving. And so, as residents, I tell the residents, where do you think the students are at? Where do you want them at the end of the month? Now, how are you going to get there? What's your role in that? And if I'm the attending, what's my role in that? And how are we going to work together? And when we start talking about that, they may say stuff that I say, I can't do that. That's not me. But here's what I can do.
So we're at the end of our time. And in terms of next week, Medical Grand Rounds is again next week at 12 noon in the auditorium where you usually meet. There will actually be no Medical Center Hour next week. Medical Center Hour is observing UVA spring break next week. So we'll see you for Medical Center Hour in 2 weeks on the 18th of February with Kay Redfield Jameson talking about unquiet minds living with bipolar illness.